Hello everybody, my name is Akemi, also known as Akemi-kun Cosplay, and I cosplay and craft. So, long story short, in October of last year, Mr. Rito Games himself slid into my DMs and said, "Hey, you like Arcane, right?" "Of course I do, Mr. Rito. Why wouldn't I love Arcane?" "Well, since the show is coming out soon, we're releasing a second Arcane Bundle from that cool game called VALORANT. So, Riot hit me up and asked me to make two of the weapons from their new Arcane Bundle, the Arcane Gauntlets and the Arcane Vandal, which looks like a little mini fish bone. It's so cute. So I said to Mr. Rito Games, yes, I would absolutely love to be a part of this project. When do you need it by? And they said November. The first week of November. Unfortunately, deadlines do get pretty tight sometimes, but I was confident I could make it happen. Been doing this for about 10 years. I know how to manage my time pretty well. I generally know how long things take me. I also had the help of some lovely assistants as well, so not an impossible task. Many sleepless nights, but not impossible. Unfortunately, because the deadline was so tight for this project, I didn't get to film as much as I wanted to, but I will do my best to explain the process of it all. I never claimed this was a tutorial. I just wanted to show you how I do stuff sometimes. Welcome to the lair. We're about 3 weeks away from the project deadline, and I currently have one of the gauntlets completely printed, not started, printed. And right now I'm printing out the second one. So essentially what I'm doing is just I'm laying out as many pieces as I possibly can on my poor two little bamboos, and I can monitor them from here. I'd wish they print a little faster, but you know, it's fine, it's fine. Here they are, the babies. Number 2 is about halfway done. Here is gauntlet number 1, all nice and finished. They're all individually organized into these little boxes, and I'm gonna have to sand, paint, and assemble all of these. And I'm gonna have to do it twice. So, first things first, all of these prints required cleaning. Now, a lot of them were quite large and awkwardly shaped, so some of the support material was a little bit difficult to get off, but nothing a little elbow grease couldn't fix. I used a wide variety of pliers, hobby knives, clay shaping tools, anything I could really get my hands on to make sure that all of the support material was cleared out of all of these little nooks and crannies in each of the 3D prints. Once all the pieces were cleaned, it was time to get sanding. I like to use a 120 grit sandpaper just to get rid of any leftover print lines and to prep the surface for the primer. For the 2 people that are interested in my whole process, I'll put it up on the screen here. Once everything is sanded, everything gets 2 to 3 coats of automotive filler primer. This helps fill in any additional gaps and is also really easy to sand. And for any of those deep crevices or any flaws in the print, I go in and I fill it in with a bit of Bondo Spot Putty. This is a lot thicker than the filler primer, and it helps fill up any huge imperfections. Once all of those gauntlet pieces were done and drying, it was time to start working on the Vandal. Now for the Vandal, a lot of these pieces were super tiny and delicate, so I had to be a lot more careful. So the bamboo can print really tiny, which is awesome. But also you still get print lines on stuff this small, so it still means I have to go in and clean them up. Yeah, sanding tiny pieces like this isn't fun, but as long as you can get in there with a file, it usually gets the job done. But just like the gauntlets, I go in and I clean up all of these pieces individually with my assortment of tools to get off all of the support material. But a lot of these pieces on the Vandal were really tiny and delicate. There are lots of teeth, screws, baubles, so just to save time and to make sure that I wouldn't lose them, they actually got glued into place beforehand. Once all the pieces were prepped and glued together, it was time to base sand these as well, to prep them for filler primer. Some of these pieces were so small they only really needed one coat instead of my standard 2 to 3 coats of filler primer.
Games upon my kingdom. I have so much to paint and only 2 days to do it. Everything sanded and primed really nicely. I went through 25 cans of automotive primer.
25?
Yeah. It's time to paint finally. My goal is to do the gauntlets first, so that way Stuffy can go ahead and start fiddling with the LEDs on those.
This is one of those portions I forgot to film, unfortunately, but once all that filler primer dried, it got sanded again and primed again in order to paint. After studying my references a billion times, I went ahead and I started testing out some metallic paint that I just had lying around. Once I was happy with the colors, I went ahead and painted all of the pieces in a nice bright gold color. For the pieces that had different shades of metal, they got masked off and re-spray painted. Always love peeling away the masking tape to reveal that clean line underneath. Oh yeah. That's nice. I opted to paint the interior instead of lining them in faux leather because these were going to be worn by multiple people at an event. So I didn't want anything that was going to have any wear and tear or possibly lift over time with a lot of hands coming in and out of the gauntlets. Once everything was dry, it was finally time to start laying down the blue for the gauntlets. Now the reason why I decided to hand paint this instead of airbrushing or spray painting was because I wanted to create that brushstroke event that the Arcane characters have in the show. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to film a lot of this painting process, but after the base blue was laid down, I laid down a shade of lighter blue and then an even lighter blue on top of that to help highlight some higher areas and scratches. But now it was time to weather. I did this by using a blend of brown and black oil paints and applied it into all the little nooks and crannies with a small brush, anywhere where dirt and grime would occur naturally. While the paint was still wet, I went in with a small Q-tip and ended up wiping most of it away, leaving just enough to highlight these little areas. This is a great technique in order to bring more life and dimension into your piece. Technology from Piltover is definitely not known for its cleanliness, so I made sure that every little crevice got this treatment. Once everything is dry, everything gets coated in a nice thick layer of clear satin varnish. Now it's time to assemble. The favorite glue I like to use is this 2-part epoxy that you can get from Harbor Freight. It's super cheap, but for whatever reason, I find it works the best. After carefully slotting each of these pieces into place, I actually go a step further and I apply a little bit of extra epoxy around the edges with an old brush. While the gauntlets were curing, I was still working on the Vandal on the side. One of my assistants has an extremely steady hand, so I requested his assistance to help me hand paint all of these little details, especially on Fishbone's head. Once he was done, I went ahead and added some extra details as well as some final weathering. And now it was time to assemble. Now this Vandal was actually quite complex with a lot of pieces interconnecting and overlapping one another, so I actually opted to weather most of this once it was completely assembled. There were also some really tiny details that didn't require any epoxy, so they just got super glued into place. Once everything was assembled, it was time to weather. I used the same paint combo I used on the gauntlets, but used a slightly heavier hand. Since this is supposed to be based after Jinx's fish bones, I figured it'd be a bit dirtier than the gauntlets. Now, I don't know anything about LEDs, so I had Stumpy take over this portion for me. She was in charge of wiring all the lights for both the gauntlets and the Vandal. Before final assembly, the Vandal got one last coat of clear satin varnish. Now, let's see the results. And that is how I made these Vi gauntlets and this Jinx Vandal in about 3 weeks. Crazy. I unfortunately do not have the Jinx Vandal here to show you. Riot stole it from me. I'm just kidding. They actually loved it so much that they wanted to display it in HQ at Riot headquarters, which is super cool. Look at that. It looks so neat. But here are some details that I did not get a chance to cover or film, unfortunately, that I think are pretty neat. So all of the LED parts up top are in plastizote foam. It's that really thin white foam that allows that translucent light to come through. And in order to access the LEDs themselves, I actually hit them underneath the dial. So it just magnetizes to the base of the gauntlet, and inside are all the wires and the little double D battery. It does the job. I also wrapped the palms in faux leather as well, which was really cool, and I airbrushed and shaded the whole thing. Wow, super cool. Wish I freaking filmed it. Oh well, god damn it. They also were on display at the Arcane Finale event in LA, which was also super awesome. I got to see a lot of influencers take selfies and photos with these up in the VIP section. Very fun. Also, on top of making the gauntlets and the Vandal, I also had to make a Clove cosplay for Miss Quarter Jade herself, which was so cool. It wasn't just making gauntlets and Jinx Vandal in 3 weeks. It was also both of those and the Clove cosplay. Again, thank you so much to Spearmaster for the Clove files. Amazing work. And thank you to Umberwigs for the Clove wig as well. Beautiful. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Apologies if it's a little rough. I'm still a bit new to this whole YouTube thing, and in the future, I promise, I will do my best to film more content, hopefully when I am not on a super crazy time crunch. But yeah, that is all, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! Also, huge thanks to my supporters over on Patreon. Brandon, Brian, Bruvas Dunn, DJF, Jen, Kevin, Matthew, Ravenclaw, Raz, RJ, Stumpy, and Thonos. If you like what I do, you can support me there. I post lots of behind the scenes, and you guys can even help me pick out my next project. Bang, bang. Good job. Papa want more movie.